Welcome to another episode of News Dose, where I give you some of the latest news, speculation, and rumors in the game industry. And today we have a lot of things to talk about. Xbox is making a new controller that is very Switch-like in how the Joy-Cons work, and well, that isn't a bad thing, so we will discuss that. And we got more Pokemon news, including Game Freak's priorities, which goes outside of just Pokemon. And are we seeing another hint at Xbox targeting a Japanese studio to acquire? There's also several game announcements, both cool and, well, even just a little bit confusing. So let's jump right into this. So it does appear Xbox is going forward with their Joy-Con-like controller. Now we've seen this patent before, and it first appeared way back in 2014, and nothing really ever happened with it. So I think most of us just kind of forgot about it, but it has resurfaced, and I think this makes perfect sense, for several different reasons really, but most importantly, the timing. We know Xbox is launching their xCloud service soon, which is of course where you play Xbox games through the cloud to different devices such as mobile phones. Of course, one problem has always been, what controller will you use? There's several different third-party options on the market, but third-party controllers often aren't known for their quality, and they may not even have all the buttons you need. And of course, you can always use the Xbox controller, but you have to use a clip to attach your phone to the controller. I already have one of these myself, but it's a little cumbersome, and honestly, it makes it more of a hassle than anything. But what if they made a Joy-Con-like controller and it works similarly to how the Switch works right now? And that is exactly what it seems Xbox is doing. The Nintendo Switch has been a huge success, and in my opinion, its greatest strength is that it can become a handheld device. While the Xbox can't do the exact same thing that the Nintendo Switch can, they can make the xCloud a more enjoyable service by giving us a quality controller that won't be too difficult to carry around while we're on the go. Honestly, I'll probably end up buying this if it does come to the market, because I do like playing games on handheld devices, especially Japanese games, and I know that Microsoft doesn't really have a lot of Japanese games anyways, which I'll get into in just a second. But I like the design of this, and even if I'm in my house, I could definitely see times where I would play this over a TV. That's just me. Like I said, I've always liked handheld devices, so for me, I think that I would definitely buy this. Now there was something else a little interesting going on with Xbox today, depending on who you ask. About a month ago, I made a video talking about how Xbox is looking to target an Asian studio to acquire, but more specifically a Japanese studio. This came straight from Phil Spencer himself, so it seems very likely, and of course we do know that Microsoft has been going on a bit of an acquisition spree in just the last, 12 or 14 months, where they've bought like seven studios and they built up like 2 other ones. Well, today, insider Klobrille seems to be hinting further at a Japanese acquisition, quoting Phil Spencer, and this has Xbox fans very excited. Of course, Xbox isn't known for Japanese games, but if they build a Japanese studio or acquire one, that would probably, in my opinion, go a long way. They could start making games such as Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon once again. We also do know that Microsoft has hired a team over in Asia to recruit Asian developers, so this could be linked to that. I will say though, this is coming from Klobrille, and while he does have a good track record in Xbox acquisitions, or he actually leaked the Obsidian acquisition well ahead of time, and he says he actually hinted towards the Double Fine acquisition. I'm not really sure how on that one, which I'd have to look into that though. But Klobrille does come off as a bit of a hype man from time to time. And the reason I bring this up is because he might just be posting this a month later to get people excited, and it may not be a hint at all, so don't take this as a confirmation. But it's kind of hard to tell with Klobrille because he gives hints away with riddles and everything else. Nonetheless, I would expect Xbox to acquire some Japanese studio or build one themselves at some point, considering Phil Spencer did already say that. At the very least, we do know that they're looking at Japanese studios right now. Now, this isn't so much about selling Xbox in Japan, but rather it'll appeal to the Western audience who does like Japanese games, and with a service like Xbox Game Pass, they wouldn't have to worry as much about how much it sells at retail. I think by this point, it's a matter of when rather than if. Xbox wasn't the only one of the big 3 that made news today though. Sony's first-party studio Media Molecule talked a little bit about their upcoming game Dreams, which has blown me away with its creative tools. If you haven't seen what people are making in this game, you should definitely go check it out because people are doing some crazy stuff with Dreams. I mean, it's truly impressive, and it looks like Media Molecule realizes this because they are trying to think of a way to allow creators to monetize their content. Now, here is where the problem lies with that. While in theory, that sounds like a great idea, you can make content in their new game Dreams and then you can sell it. But a lot of the stuff people have been creating is from existing franchises such as Banjo-Kazooie, Crash Bandicoot, Mario, and the list goes on. And these aren't just simple imitations like we've seen in past games with Little Big Planet. With the tools creators are getting in Dreams, they look really good, and this could lead into licensing problems. Honestly, I don't see how you could do this without the fear of being sued. Like I said, cool in theory, but I don't really think anything will come from this. Speaking of licensing, Cuphead is getting its own Netflix show. I loved Cuphead when it came out a few years ago, and I think the first thing almost anybody is going to recognize when it comes to Cuphead is its art style. Of course, the art style is reminiscent of old cartoons like Mickey Mouse, so a TV adaptation will translate brilliantly. The 4 things you need to know about the Netflix original Cuphead is that the game developers will not be involved with the show because, well, it would never be finished. It has its own unique story, so it isn't a recreation of the game about don't deal with the devil. It'll appeal to both kids and adults. And lastly, it will continue to be hand-drawn. Well, kind of. Not with a pencil this time, but rather digitally. Personally, I think it all sounds really great on paper and something to keep an eye out for at the very least. In other news, we got a new game announcement of the beloved franchise, Turok. And well, if that name gets you excited, take a step back because that is all this game is, a title. It's Turok, only in name. When I first heard the announcement, I too got excited, only to realize that it wasn't the Turok that I wanted. I grew up loving dinosaurs. I was simply fascinated by them, so obviously I ended up really liking Turok growing up, but it seems like that really is a distant part of my past by this point. Sure, I'll be hoping that one day we will get a new Turok game, but this game certainly isn't what I'm looking for. I mean, it doesn't really look like it's a bad game because, well, that isn't true. It's just a letdown for Turok fans in my opinion. It's kind of like Banjo Nuts and Bolts. Banjo Nuts and Bolts is not a bad game. It's actually a good game. But because it is coming from the Banjo-Kazooie franchise where there's already this big fan base that's really excited for a new Banjo-Kazooie game, it's not what they wanted. And that's kind of what this game right here is with Turok. I don't know, maybe you're excited for it, and if you are, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm just completely wrong about this. We also got to see another trailer of Pokemon Sword and Shield, which is looking pretty good. I know a lot of fans haven't exactly been happy with Sword and Shield, but I've liked what I've seen so far. We got to see several new Pokemon such as Alcremie, Yamper, Roly-Poly, and some rock dragon-like thing, but I think one thing a lot of people are talking about in particular is the trainer designs. The Fighting Master Bay looks pretty cool, but the Ghost type Master Alistair looks insane and in the best possible way. And really the designs this generation so far has just seemed to be on point, or at least in my opinion. I've come away liking a lot of what I've seen so far in terms of the Pokemon's design. I'm not really a huge fan of the giant Pokemon, but I wasn't really a big fan of Mega Evolutions or Z-moves either, which I'll get into in just a moment. But Game Freak did show off a new transformation by the name of Gigantamax, and it is different than Dynamax, which is where your Pokemon pretty much just sets their belt to Wumbo and becomes big. Gigantamax, on the other hand, changes both the size and appearance of the Pokemon, and only certain Pokemon can actually do this. We saw a few in this trailer, but I'm sure several others will get their own Gigantamax evolutions as well, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see some of them come from the previous generations. There was actually a leak before that has proven to be very accurate so far, and got the Gigantamax evolution correct a long time ago, and it does say that Lapras, Pikachu, and Meowth will get Gigantamax evolutions. It also says Farfetch'd will get a regional evolution, which is That has me pumped anyways. So like I said, this leak has been on point so far, so I wouldn't be too surprised to see if all this info is correct. It has been to this point, so like I said before though, I'm not really big into the Dynamax stuff, but I'm starting to like it a little bit more than what I did before. We've seen Game Freak experiment with these special evolutions a lot since Pokemon X and Y, and I've never really been big into it. And that's more because I don't like the strategy behind the Mega Evolutions, where it seems like the Megas had to take up one of the 6 party slots. And well, I just didn't like the Z moves at all. There wasn't a single thing I liked about the Z moves. Speaking of Game Freak though, the Video Game Chronicles interviewed Game Freak and they talked a lot about their other projects besides Pokemon. And one thing really stood out to me was that they are apparently prioritizing their other games over Pokemon, which is a little surprising to me. That doesn't mean they aren't putting a lot of resources into Pokemon, but that is how it was worded. I actually think their new upcoming game for the Switch, Town, looks interesting myself, but I always had a feeling it was more of a side thing than anything else. Game Freak went on to say that it keeps the team refreshed once they come back to the Pokemon franchise, and then they can use what they learned on the Pokemon franchise. It does all make sense in theory, and I hope he's right. That way they can get a lot of new and creative ideas, which is what I like to see. Anyways, that's all for this episode of News Dose, but let me know in the comments below on what you think, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.